Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Today, this episode will be a bit longer because we spend our lives asking questions, so it deserves the time to understand its power. So, I have a question. Did you get through your day without asking one? I ask this because there were seasons in my life when I didn't speak a word. Not because I had nothing to say, but because no one was around to speak to. And if anyone was, they didn't know how to listen. On other occasions, there were days I got through in silence. There was no need to ask a question, and yet the day would end. But silence didn't mean stillness. See, I've moved through systems and learned a lot about many others. Systems that most people will never encounter all at once in a single lifetime. I didn't plan it that way. Life demanded it, and I showed up. But over time, I noticed something strange. My presence made people uncomfortable. They were uncomfortable even before I met them, and often without even knowing me. Not because I was loud, but because I carried experience they couldn't comprehend or categorize. Some said, I am so jealous of you. Others laughed nervously and said, I wish I was you. Some also paused and said, Your existence makes me question what I've been doing with my life. And the most hurtful part was that when they said, Forget who you are, forget what you know, don't talk about it, your existence is a problem. Imagine that. Being punished for knowing how things work. Being silenced for understanding complexity and helping people through it. And being erased for solving problems no one even had on their radar and continuously creating solutions that prevented collapse again and again. But isn't that what is marketed as the foundation for a healthy system? Multifunctionality, resilience, intelligence, versatility, growth, and development. We want systems that can adapt, iterate, and respond. Even artificial intelligence systems are designed like that. Think about it. Would you tell a barista to forget every drink but two? Would you shame a chef for knowing more than one recipe? Would you erase the skills and experiences of a construction worker who is capable of building your whole house from the ground up, from foundation to electrical, plumbing, tiling, drywall, roofing, driveway and garden design, window installation, painting, and so on? Or what about a seamstress? Would you expect her to do one thing? What if she knows how to sew everything for you and your home? Your clothes, your curtains, your beddings, and so on? And what about a live in caregiver? Would you expect that person to only deliver medication on schedule? Or they prefer to have skills in other things like preparing meals, ensuring hygiene is maintained, and so on? Of course not. So, why do systems and people penalize those who show up with a range of skills and expertise? Why are those who create and produce at the highest quality get punished? Those are questions that should be asked more. And if you're wondering if there are really people like that, the answer is yes. There are people like that. And you know what? They are not welcome, included, valued, or even paid for their worth. And the systems around them, those systems see those people as something to exploit, something to devalue. They do not reward them. Instead, those systems crush them. It punishes them and destroys their sense of self worth until they doubt their very existence. Even as I'm sharing all of this with you, I'm doubting and questioning if what I'm sharing even matters. Why? It's because systems, like people, often fear what they don't control. When someone appears who wasn't trained in their mold, the system malfunctions. Not because it's broken, but because it's exposed. What I do and what these people do isn't what threatens people. It's that we don't stop being. We don't wait for permission to learn. We don't beg for validation to solve problems. We don't shrink ourselves to fit the shallow comfort zone built by others who live their entire lives refusing to grow. Survival is built on being multifunctional. That's the real threat. Autonomy inside a dependent system. Self awareness inside systems of mimicry. So let me be honest with you. I wasn't born confident. I had to become it through brutal self study, cracked mirrors, trial, failure, and countless restarts again and again. It's the same kind of work ethic most people reserve for escaping a burning building, because that's what it felt like. Surviving in systems built for erasure and suffocating growth. So many people still think that systems are broken, but the truth is that many aren't broken. They're functioning exactly as designed to uphold bare minimum. And when those of us who have memory, range, pattern recognition, and compassion still intact walk in, well, the system does what it always does, it resists. But here's the thing: questions were never small talk for me. They were the foundation of survival, growth, and healing. They were the first steps in understanding the very systems that tried to convince me I had no value or that I wasn't worth saving. Questions taught me how to breathe again, mentally, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. Questions weren't luxury, they were life or the opposite. And I know I'm not the only one. To those who are born with vision, the mind is often the only space where we are allowed to exist. And in that space, we question, we imagine, we build. We improve ourselves because the systems around us won't. But for those who have no vision, the mind can become a closed loop, a space inside themselves they never need to enter, a space that never evolves, and so it stays the same. No discomfort, no transformation, no new questions, only answers that calcify over time. That's where questions come in. Because a question isn't an attack, it's an opening, a point of contact between systems and souls. It's how we ask, is this the only way it has to be? And other questions? Well, they've been the foundation of every system and structure. Except anyone who questions the status quo is not seen as curious. They are judged and punished. They are silenced and erased, and they are treated badly and banished into exile. But here's the thing: these scenarios aren't unique to any one system. Across the world, people encounter the same situations in their everyday lives, and it also leaves them continuously questioning everything about themselves. So if you felt that way, just know it's more common than you think. And what about those times when questions make no sense? Have you ever experienced that? Like, get this. Sometimes I'd be asked by someone what I was planning to do and how. Except when I answered, the person chose to plant seeds of doubt, like, are you sure about that? Or they'd say, you could never achieve that, don't even try. So eventually, I got irritated and I just started saying, hold on, let me check with myself. Then I'd pause, give it a few seconds, and say, yes, I checked with myself and I'm sure. I don't say this to hurt anyone's feelings, but sometimes people don't think about the impact of the questions they ask. Maybe you've done that to someone because everyone plants doubt instead of listening and providing support. Sometimes this is done knowingly, and sometimes it's done unknowingly. How many times have you experienced that yourself? Maybe you were just enjoying being a child and you weren't hungry, but you were told to eat. So when you grew up and you were asked, are you hungry? And you say no, and that no isn't respected, then you're told you should eat. It makes the whole interaction weaker, not stronger. And that's the thing about questions. They can either anchor us or unnerve us. On a personal scale, they can deepen trust or sow confusion. But on a global scale, they shape everything we live within. Or maybe you were struggling as a child and you were hungry and kept asking, can I have some food? But what you wanted to eat was not available, or food was scarce and you didn't eat. So when you grew up, food to you became a life source not to be wasted or taken for granted. Which leads us into today's topic, the power of questions. Because let's face it, not all questions are good or kind or even welcome. But the questions that matter, well, they shape our world and the future unfolds. Imagine there was a time when a question was the most dangerous thing you could ask. In some societies today, that is still the case. But before fire had a name, before wheels found their path, before answers grew cold in textbooks, before even books, a question wasn't academic. It was survival. A question was the choice between life or death, safety or danger, a filled stomach or starvation. That's if you were allowed to speak at all. Think about it. If you were living even a few hundred years ago, which is something I shared in the stories about tomatoes and limes and lemons, you can imagine questions being asked like these. How do we store food so it doesn't rot or get infested by pests or ruined by mold? What happens when the sun disappears? How do we protect ourselves in the woods? Why can't we move this stone to where it needs to go? Why is this so heavy? I wish it could be easier to carry. Because when someone heard, how do I move this heavy thing without breaking my back? Another listened. And so the wheel was born. But that wheel didn't stop at carts and wagons. It turned the soil of the earth and the turbines in the sky. Another asked, and fermentation saved villages. And yet another asked, and fire kept the night from being too scary. Because throughout history, questions were never just words, they were turning points. Some for the better, some for the worst, and some not at all. Because many get to the end of their life with regrets about questions they didn't ask and wonder about answers they will never get. Look around you. Your fridge. Someone asked how to keep food and drinks fresh and safe for consumption so you can survive. Your phone. It only exists because someone once dared to tap into the invisible. Think the electromagnetic waves that have always pulsed through our world. Think about that. A human being once asked, what if we could send a voice through the air? And now you carry that magic in your pocket. or even the road you drive on, giving you access from one place to many. How many experiences have you had from just having access to transportation facilitated by roads? Something the average person, even just 100 years ago, could not even dream of. Even one of these civilization shaping systems began with a question. But we forget. We look at systems, education, housing, healthcare, and we assume they arrived like mountains, fixed, immovable. But someone asked, why shouldn't every child be taught to read? And books, libraries, and classes flooded the world. It was not easy, but it happened. What about someone asking, can light be captured in a glass bulb? And now we sleep beneath electric stars, and for Christmas, lights of all colors are displayed. So, where did that hunger go? The kind that said, this can be better, this can be more. The first wheel wasn't made of wood, it was made of need, of frustration, of vision. It was made of trial and error, question after question. Wood cracks, it can warp when wet. Someone asked if it needs to be reinforced. Skip over about 3,500 years, and we live in the world as it's structured today. And we think the wheel is simple. It's not. Because the wheel runs everything. It's in our cars and attached to almost all forms of modern transportation. Our clocks. You cannot miss the time unless you choose to. Our pulleys and gears shaping skylines around the world. Our elevators. We learned about that when I shared the story on confidence. Our economies. Every product, resource, service, and system across land, air, water, and sea. We are surrounded by systems that move on wheels, and every wheel runs on a question. But these aren't just historical curiosities. They are the real reason you have clean drinking water, antibiotics, global positioning systems or GPS, electric stoves, and bridges. Because someone, somewhere asked, is this all there is? Could it be better? And someone answered, yes. The fridge was born from necessity, not luxury. It started with milk, spoiled milk, sick children, then meat and beer, but ultimately became about altering time itself. The fridge wasn't just about food, it was invented to do what we all secretly long for, to slow time. How long does the items in your fridge last? Not very long if it's something you love, I can imagine. But that one home appliance, which now comes with the most advanced technologies, all started with questions. How do we prevent food waste? How do we save and protect our children who needs milk to survive? So now you have more time. Time to store, time to eat, time to not waste. Time for mothers, farmers, and workers across the planet to breathe a little. In most countries, electricity is not in stable, reliable supply. Why? Because of crime at all levels of society, outdated systems, and unexpected visits from nature's natural processes like storms or floods. But when the fridge does work, you can open that door without thinking, because behind that hum is a story of alchemy, health, and hope. In a world growing in population, someone had to ask, how do we store our food? So it led to the invention of jars. a wartime innovation born from hunger and preservation. When in 1795 the French government offered a reward to anyone who could invent a method to preserve large quantities of food for its soldiers on long campaigns, since hunger, spoilage, and disease were killing more troops than combat. So, they needed a way to store food without it rotting. I can go more in depth about this particular story in a perspective you would never find anywhere else. So, if you want to hear more on canning and food preservation, let me know in the comments. In a world that cannot live without bread, someone else asked, "Why does the bread keep molding?" Which later led to better ventilation, preservation, and storage. The right questions, when asked in the right way at the right time, built bridges, saved lives, even launched rockets. Some questions were never asked out loud because they were dangerous, or silenced, or swallowed for generations. Questions like, why can't I read? Why do I work but cannot eat? Why is my body treated like a battleground? Others were asked too late. What if we had listened before the war? There are questions that never made it into textbooks because they came from tongues no one thought worthy to remember. Today, we have artificial intelligence that can finish your sentence, but can't teach a government how to feed, house, or protect its people. We have smart cities with dumb priorities, children and adults with tablets but no dinner, students and workers memorizing facts and dreaming about Mars, while sitting homeless under Earth's stars. Why? Because maybe more of us need to ask, why do we know so much and solve so little? Why, in a world of artificial intelligence and 5G, do people still sleep in tents on sidewalks? Because in nations with more schools per capita than ever before, where education is announced to be the best, why can't people in a modern society read past the fourth grade? Most public information is tailored to an audience with a reading level of grade 6. Just think about that for a second. And while you are thinking about that, also think about this. Why is there more food waste and food scarcity than food security and food abundance? Why is what is written not what is followed? And why is freedom held up as a virtue, but those who ask, is this right for me, punished? Well, it's because some questions make things uncomfortable. That's why silence is enforced. Answers can be graded. Answers can be standardized. Answers don't ask for solutions and improvement, but questions? Questions spark new languages, new directions, new systems. Questions disturb the comfort of learned and punishable silence. Sometimes the question isn't about systems, it's about your interactions and experiences in the world. These range from questions like, why didn't they choose me? Why did they lie? Did I ever matter? Or worse, was I just a placeholder for someone else's comfort? Why am I not valued? Or why do I always have to be the strong one? And why is being kind seen as being weak? But here's the truth. A question, when asked with discernment, is not a complaint. It's not an act of rebellion. Because a question can also be a mirror. And some people and some systems were never designed to survive their own reflection. So they see it as an attack, as if being asked to reflect is the same as being accused. They raise their voice, they shut down, they twist your questions into weapons. Because reflection was never taught, they inherited only defense. But a question is not violence. A question is a door, and not everyone is ready to walk through it, especially those who have spent their whole lives guarding the room they built on silence. So they lash out, not because you are wrong, but because you are right. And your question threatens the story they're still clinging to. Because some people don't want answers, they want comfort, control, convenience. And questions feel like fire to the paper walls of their comfort. But that's not your fault, and it's not your burden. Questions are asked not because people are ungrateful, but because they are alive. The wheel still turns to provide someone light, and somewhere, someone is still being told to stay silent, and another is learning how to speak. So ask, and ask again, until the system remembers it was built on questions. It's not that we stopped knowing, it's that we stopped asking, stopped listening, stopped making room for the kinds of questions that reshape the world for the better. You don't need permission to wonder. You don't need credentials to care. You don't need a title to be tired of pretending. You just need a question and the courage to live through the silence that follows. The world runs because somewhere someone refused to stop at I don't know, a phrase most people use even when they do know, because either they choose not to or are prevented from sharing. So we return to the wheel, which is not a symbol of ease, but the wheel represents a test, because after it started turning, we made sure it never stopped. We automated. We scaled. We consumed. We accelerated. But where are we going and why? What is it costing us to get there? We kept building the wheel, but we forgot to ask if it still rolls in the right direction. So I'll ask you, what is the question you're afraid to ask? What truth would unravel if you finally said it out loud? Why do we teach people to raise their hands but not their standards? Every system you use today, they all exist because someone, likely unseen, asked, could this be done differently? See, we talk a lot about genius, but rarely about the question that sparked it. In a time where billions have degrees but cannot access peace of mind, where you can Google the mass of Jupiter in seconds but still not know how to ask for help, what questions are we not allowed to ask? And what are the most important questions? The ones about dignity, belonging, and survival, often the ones ignored. So ask. Ask boldly. Ask quietly. Ask when you're afraid. Ask when you're ready. Ask again. The wheel still turns. The world still answers. And every breath you take is a silent question asking life to meet you again and again. My content is produced independently. You can like, share, subscribe, or don't. I'll only ask you, are you living the best life you can where you are now? If yes, good. Enjoy it. If not, start asking why and also ask, does actual intelligence even exist? Because anyone still asking you to list your strengths and weaknesses, they're already behind. In a world where shaking hands are meant to symbolize peace and agreement, you'd think we'd have the highest standards of well being at the lowest costs since there's so much to go around. And you'd think we'd know more about the earth, how to protect it, and how to feed and house ourselves safely and abundantly, instead of chasing fantasies in outer space while siphoning Earth's last resources to get there. Because where else can you experience all your senses coming alive? Tastes, sounds, sights, colors, textures, smells, sensations, and having a place to manage your waste. Imagine doing all of that in a metal container in the middle of nowhere through headphones and screens. You already do that enough here on Earth. Can you spend a lifetime or want to build one for future generations to live like that? Between you and me, I don't know about you, but Earth wins hands down, and I'd rather call her home. The smell of machinery and the eye strain from screens, even 8 hours a day, can get annoying at times. A space to swim, dance, stretch, run, jump, and climb in the miraculous body we are born with and breathe freely in is where life can be pure magic. Plus, meals are better when prepared fresh instead of frozen, ice covered meals that are sealed in packages, don't you think? So, imagine also having to eat portion controlled and sealed in a bag meals. It destroys the fantasy fast, doesn't it? On Earth, when you're upset, you can step away and have some peace. But in a confined, closed space like a metal ship, where are you going to go if people upset you? You're going to get fed up of your bunker bed real fast. And if you like anything made with flour, say goodbye for life because the entire bakery is banned from space. You cannot get flour or crumbs floating around in your spaceship. It's a nightmare and extremely dangerous in microgravity. So now you can go deeper into the power of questions for yourself, especially if you love the sky, clouds, rain, and feeling the wind on your skin, or hearing the sounds of nature fully alive while you sit under the shade of a tree, or walk along the shoreline or sides of waterways. And if you love having plants or pets or both, see you in the next one.